Ba-dum, dum. Sorry, I'm a nerd. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Unfiltered Pineapple. Today, I am one of your hosts, Dean, joined by my fellow friends and co-hosts, Ari and Platypus. Say hi, gentlemen.
Hello.
How do you do?
All right, respectively,
Tops of the
Ari
morning to
and
you.
Platypus. Um, today we're probably gonna have to repeat some stuff that we were talking about off recording just before this, but we're gonna discuss cancel culture a bit and I guess our perspectives of it because we all have slightly different definitions of what it is or examples of it, and we realize, and so we're gonna try and get to the bottom of exactly what cancel culture probably technically is and how the impacts of it, and if it's any good nowadays to be using that term and coining it and whatnot, the impacts of it over the years. So we'll take it back to Platypus to start because you started off with a good definition or example of what it's about as opposed to like what Ari thought it was about.
Right. Yeah. Well, so we were talking about cancel culture, and I just wanted to bring up a pretty prominent example of what it means to be canceled. So there was this streamer who was very popular on YouTube, EDP445. I didn't personally even know who he was till recently, but that's like how big the controversy was. And I mean, I thought it was analogous to like a Black Mirror episode because most of his livelihood and everything was electronic. And then, sure enough, when he did something that was unfavorable in the public eye, he got kind of dragged. And I mean, more or less, his life got ruined. I view him, like his case, as being canceled because any like online platform that's worth mentioning, they won't have anything to do with him. And it's even gotten to the point where he's having trouble like getting work in real life, like at a brick and mortar type of location. It's at the point where like people have taken it upon themselves to follow him around, and if they figure out that he's staying at a hotel or something, they'll go to like the clerk, the concierge, and be like, hey, you need to go ahead and like you should know who this guy is, and I don't think you should let him stay here anymore. And sure enough, he's like back on the road, but he can't do anything like online or in real life without getting flagged. And he like, in my opinion, he's been like effectively ruined. Whether or not it's right or wrong, I mean, I'm not saying that, but like he's definitely been canceled. He doesn't have anywhere near the same presence online anymore. And if he is ever spotted, he's like they come for him like piranhas. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I haven't heard of him at all yet. Like you said, apparently there's this massive, not maybe massive, but there's a very strong group of individuals that are just following him around to continue ruining his life afterwards. I didn't know that was a thing at all. It doesn't surprise me. There probably are tons of pockets out there for other celebrities or anyone that gets canceled of people that are just like, well, I'm going to make sure you never have anything again. Not saying it's justified or not based on what they did, but I didn't know that was an aspect of cancel culture. In hindsight, it doesn't surprise me that there's people out there like that, but that's not even like a big name celebrity where you'd have tons of people that are constantly watching them and whatnot. That's just a normal internet celebrity, not even like a super massive following. So I didn't know that was a thing.
So, Platypus, I was going to ask you about what was the controversy about with this streamer?
So what EDP445 did, as I understand it, he got busted for he was outed as a pedophile because I don't remember the name of the YouTubers, but there's a separate channel who, I mean, they scouted him out and lured him out a lot like what Chris Hansen did with To Catch a Predator. Like they tried to set up their whole little operation, and they pretended to be a young girl, like in her teens, and basically like messaged him. And so they already have like proof of the messages and intent and everything that they were sending to one another. But I guess the final straw was when they said, all right, well, let's meet at this motel. And it had something to do with the cupcake or something like that, or that's how he tried to play it off. Like I think they discussed cupcakes, but they were going to meet to do more than just eat cupcakes or whatever. And when he got to the motel, the YouTubers were waiting for him with cameras and everything. And I mean, they've since posted like that video and their conversations online, and it was pretty clear that he was ready to engage in certain activities with someone that's much younger than he is. And since then, he's been canceled. And I'm sure that like the nature of what he did has a lot to do with like the ferocity of, well, just like the, I guess, how much people are coming from him and how often. I'm sure that's like a lot to do with it. But yeah, that's why he's kind of been flagged in every like platform available right now.
Interesting. So yeah, something I've never actually looked up, but kind of falls in line of my understanding of what cancel culture is. Doing a quick Google search, not the most reliable, but on Wikipedia and Dictionary.com, they come up with roughly the same thing of modern day ostracism, of thrusting people out of social or professional circles. Um, Usually nowadays by publicly rejecting, or quote, publicly rejecting, boycotting, or ending support for a particular group of people or individuals because of their socially or morally unaccepted views or actions. Side note, another quote is, it can ruin careers, but it can also make public figures think twice about posting controversial comments. So in a way, the cancel culture has definitely maybe kept some people from coming to light as sooner than maybe they should have or should be. Makes people think twice about, is my opinion that important to put out there and chance ruining stuff just because I'm very emotional right now. But I don't know. It's weird because it's nothing. It's a social thing. It's not like the law where after you complete a certain amount of punishments that are given to you, you're technically you did your time. You should get back all your rights and whatnot, as by law. But the social stigma around being canceled is new. It's modern. It's something we haven't quite seen what the long-term impacts of it are. Because there's plenty of prominent YouTubers and streamers. They do have a much younger audience, of course, so they're a bit more forgiving. But they get canceled or blocked, and then like a year or two later, or a couple years go by before they start being public again, and all of a sudden they're getting back to their same number of views or slightly less, but they have a consistent, strong core fan base that's like, it wasn't that bad or is slightly overblown. And maybe for the older generations with older celebrities, it's kind of a bigger deal because they have to sign contracts and get, in terms of actors specifically, they have to get contracts for a set amount of time or episodes or for performance, and that's a big commitment to have someone that's headlines constantly for bad beliefs or actions that they've done. Whereas, YouTuber, they kind of have their own business and they can just bring it up, and if people don't want to watch it, then they won't. But they have a very strong following, even if they've said bad words or done bad things behind the cameras and whatnot. So for me, cancel culture is just kind of it's definitely a short-term solution, maybe. Obviously, if the law gets involved for stuff like pedophilia and whatnot, then that's a legal issue. That's something that should be dealt with appropriately and right away and have the correct punishment for it. But for people having differing opinions, or maybe I'm not saying they have a bad day or anything is justified, but some people are really bad at assessing what is a joke or what isn't, or how to do jokes, and they want to just make the excuse like, oh, I'm just an amateur entertainer. And it's like, we all understand social cues and whatnot. It's not difficult to there's a clear distinction between trying to make a joke or be funny, or something that you actually believe in, and now you're trying to use the ruse to get out of it because you thought your ego is a little bit too high, and you're like, oh, I can get away with it, and it's something that you just genuinely believe. I'm not trying to I'm not giving specifics because I'm not trying to call out certain creators and stuff. That's another topic. You can Google headlines for people like that, but it's
Yeah.
interesting. I'm not quite
My thing
sure.
about Yeah. My thing about cancel culture is that it's become like a very toxic culture where people are going after people, and it's not even just for noble reasons anymore, but
Yeah, yeah.
rather it's just something where, all right, well, since everyone publicates, now everything to the internet, it's just a simple, search to find stuff that people publicated years ago and taking stuff out of context and just smearing people right out of careers, right out of their livelihoods. And I think it's dangerous because I think that the culture in itself with cancel culture is really brewing this toxicity where celebrities I feel are using their power to move their fan bases against other celebrities. For example, there was a controversy between Billie Eilish and Kanye West. Kanye West is withholding his performance at Coachella because Billie Eilish did something noble and stopped her concert for someone that was having someone in their audience that was having a medical emergency. She stopped performing and made sure that she got the necessarily medical attention that she needed. And I don't understand why. I feel like the culture for cancel culture is just being able to use your audience in a way that's malicious and not necessarily noble in terms of gaining results that is beneficial to you in a way.
See, okay,
Sometimes people use that for clout.
yeah, and that's a totally different issue. That's they're just abusing a system or a movement and whatnot. And there's always instances of that throughout history for everything, and people are always, yeah. There's always people that are trying to take advantage of situations. And this is where the disagreement comes. I don't think that's cancel culture. I think that's just Kanye being a little. Let me be professional. I think that's Kanye just being a little baby. He's not really emotionally developed enough. That's not cancel culture though. Like he may be like targeting Billie Eilish and having his fans do that, but that's not cancel culture in my mind. That's just like he's like, oh, you're attacking my friend. So my friends, there's always beef like that online between celebrities and YouTube
Mm.
personalities and stuff. Cancel
I
culture.
think the Yeah, I think the culture in itself is just brewing this toxicity that
That
anyone just like can rile up their base and just like
that
go after the
toxicity
other.
always exists though. Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that. I don't think that's a I think that's definitely not cancel culture, I'll be honest. Cancel culture is like targeting the individual themselves for their actions. People are not targeting Billie Eilish because she stopped her show for that stuff. They're just saying that she made a general statement, which was almost definitely just a sly at Travis for stopping the concert and stuff. Because I'll tell you right now, he knew what was going on because they have it in their earpieces and everything. They're just denying it. They're informed of that stuff. They can see that stuff. It's not difficult. That evidence
Yeah.
says otherwise. But anyways, um, that's not cancel culture for Kanye saying, "Oh, well, I'm not doing Coachella until Billie Eilish issues an apology." He's not involved at all. He's just trying to get himself in the drama. That there is no drama. Billie Eilish was just making a comment, and it's like, look at the difference. So whatever her intentions were for doing that, being a good person, more headlines of this is how you should do it, whatever. I don't care. But that's not cancel culture. That's just him trying to stir up controversy and stuff and have a reason to not do Coachella because he probably doesn't want to, honestly. He'll still probably make money and he's not going. um, I'll be honest, he's probably just using it as an excuse to get out because it's like, well, here's a good reason. Um,
And my other thing is that the culture really treats people as irredeemable. Just like for
yes.
example, Joe Biden made
Yes.
comments against gay marriage, in 2005, which, it was a completely different landscape in the
It
country,
just became
and
legal in what, 2003,
people were
right?
just wanting to just like go after him for that, but opinions change and people change, how they think. And
Yeah.
so I don't think you can hold anyone accountable for something that they did years ago. And, frankly, stuff that doesn't even really matter because, opinions, they change and, obviously people change. And I think people should be, held for, stuff that, is bad, but at a certain point you can't just like go back into like deep history and just like start canceling people, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't really seem helpful. In a similar vein,
It just
this
encourages
was years
negativity,
ago.
yeah, and toxicity. That doesn't solve a solution or fix anything. Yeah, you're right. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Platypus. I'm just agreeing with, I think, where you're about to go.
Like all good, but like in a similar vein, years ago I remember hearing about this, but supposedly there was a kid who had gotten into like Yale or something. It was somewhere Ivy League, but he got in and I don't know, I guess she'd be like a B-list celebrity or something. I think she used to be like a Disney star or something, but point is she had like a pretty big following and she dug into this guy's past and she found a video of him when he was in like middle school cursing and he said the N-word. I mean, I'm pretty sure that it wasn't even, if you want to go there, I think it was like an A, not a hard R. And I think most people would say he was just trying not to sound cool, or he was trying to sound cool or something. But they dug up like that video from when he was in grade school and then they sent it to Yale or whichever school, and they're like, "Look at what you just let into your undergrad. Like, is this what you guys are about?" And the school is like, "No, we're not. He's not getting in anymore." And it's like, well, who really wins there? I mean, this is just like a hypothetical, but what if he was like the guy to, like cure cancer or AIDS or some shit? Probably not, but either way, like, why go that far into someone's past? And when they're like a teenager, I mean, who hasn't said dumbass shit when they were a kid?
I
Is
mean,
my
I
thing.
still say dumbass shit, and
Right.
I'm
Like,
technically an adult.
yeah, like 100% of people have done something stupid or regrettable like that, especially when they were like teens. I mean,
Yeah, no,
that's
I
like what you're supposed to
I
do.
think I remember that story. I think we were around at the same time. When I was making news. Yeah, no, I don't think people should be targeting individuals from middle school or teenage years or even young adults. Every country has a different age for what's classified as an adult, but even then, like people make mistakes as they expand their horizons and learn new
Right.
things about life, whether different demographics or lifestyles and everything, because they've been sheltered the whole time until they start living by themselves. Sheltered meaning they've had their own worldview for years and years of their life, and now is being expanded. Not necessarily that they're sheltered children, but they've had their own worldview that hasn't changed very much. Doesn't apply to everyone, but the general individual, you've kind of had a very structured, predictable youth throughout your years of schooling. So, I agree with that. I don't think cancel culture should apply to anyone that is. It should go back to when they were young or teenagers, because we all make cringy jokes, or we finally start understanding some slightly darker humor or puns and whatnot. And you're like, oh, this is funny, or you're trying to fit in with a group of uh, new schoolmates that talk differently or make different kind of jokes. You're gonna just adapt it. Everyone's just trying to fit in, be cool, show that they understand the jokes or what's going on. And I can hang out too. I know what you're talking about. I feel you, brother. However cringy they want to be. You can't control that as a kid. Kids just want to fit in. They're just gonna do what seems cool or gives them attention or doesn't make them stand out, at least. So targeting back then is bad. It's like same with targeting people from like 20 years ago, like you said about Joe Biden making comments about that. Totally different world back then. You have to take things into context back then. Like Jim Crow law ages, it was totally legal, and no one societally batted an eye when people were making slurs all the time, because that's just what the general populace was doing. Not everyone was like that, obviously, but that's just what was normal back then. And it takes time for people to be like, and to get some empathy and understand how things happen and the impact of them, for them to be like, oh, that's not right. I've changed my mind and I've grown from that. It's as simple as that. Yeah, people shouldn't be targeted when they're middle school and high school. I don't agree with that Yale thing. Do I agree with what he was doing? No, but you can't entirely blame him for it. You don't know the context of it, or what's been going on at school around him for weeks before then, and it's hard to take those kind of things out of context. For comedians and adults, when they start their career, sometimes they try to make a name for themselves and they get cringy or dark and whatnot, and that's a choice. Is it the right choice? Probably not. Can you blame them? Not entirely. It's a tough business to get out there. I don't support anything like that if they make weird or direct jokes or ostracizing comments and whatnot. But at the same time, you kind of have to just take it in the full context of stuff. Should they move their material away from that? Yes. Should they be canceled for it? No. Maybe like a warning? I don't know. Discussing it in the terms of comedy and comedians is a totally different thing because their whole point is to push the line and bring to light common day misconceptions and stuff and be like, yeah, see, you thought I was going somewhere else with that joke. It's tough. But I definitely don't agree with targeting kids and teenagers and stuff for anything. Even if they're a college student now, you can't blame them for some of their upbringing.
Do you think like comedians should be even like targeted? Because I feel like it's just a waste
they
of
should
time.
be held accountable to some degree. Otherwise, everyone's going to be like, I'm a comedian. I'm an amateur comedian. Like a bunch of dumbasses.
Oh, I mean, I understand that, but we're talking about like professional
so
comedians,
then you have to define,
like Dave Chappelle,
Yeah, so obviously the biggest named headliners, yeah, they should definitely be more recognizable, but you got to define what's considered big name or professional. Are you talking like how many tickets they sell every week or whatever, or how many hours they're putting into performing? Like then that gets nuanced of, well, how far down do you go before they're just still considered amateur or they're considered experienced, but they don't have a big following because they've done it for years at their local nightclub. And so if we're talking about headliners, they're just kind of like normal celebrities at that point. But they are comedians. Their job is to make you, not necessarily shock factor, but surprise you. It's like, oh, you weren't expecting it to go that way, or oh, that's a funny ending. Oh, I wasn't expecting that to be said. And usually there's subtle references or cues into what's being discussed or joked about. Very rarely are jokes from headlining comedians just on the nose, like he walked in the door and the door hit him in the face and everyone laughs. No, there's some nuance to it. There's always like a little bit of like subtlety to what is the social cues going on in the background. What are the innuendos or stereotypes that are taking place, and here's why it's different, or you weren't expecting it, or something like that, given the context. So their point is their job, even headliners are supposed to push the boundary. That's why Louis C.K. kind of blew up, and with a lot of his jokes, he was pushing the boundary a lot. Now, he got canceled because of what he was doing behind the scenes, which is appropriate. But for jokes the comedians make on stage, they're spending hours and weeks and months and years on tour practicing and rehearsing some of these jokes before someone tries to call them out for it, which, if the joke is super bad, not giving examples, but if it's like just very targeted and it's not even humorous at all, so it's like that's just a straight up jab or targeted attack at a different group of people or individuals, yeah, call them out for it. But if it's part of a bigger theme of the episode and that's just one that slightly pushes the boundary or something, I think that's something for discussion, obviously, but not to cancel over. It's just they just need more discussion of, hey, here's why that's a little bit too far of a boundary for this demographic or for most people outside that demographic, kind of a thing. Most headliners, comedian-wise, to my knowledge, just aren't really pushing that boundary that hard. Dave Chappelle, he's always been more of an outlier where he kind of just speaks his mind openly, and he's very candid about why he thinks the way. So he's not really coming from a place of ignorance, and if he is, he's telling you, I'm not informed on this, but this is what I think, and here's why I do. And people want to cancel someone who even himself openly admits, hey, I'm open for discussion or learning why this is wrong. Here's why I think this way and why I've been saying this joke for the last year and a half, and no one has said anything different to me or has said, yeah, that's pretty good. You get constant feedback from people and audience members and stuff. Like if you catch a comedian on tour, they're like, give us your thoughts or something. Even after their show, sometimes they'll get like applause or something from people. Be like, yeah, did this sound good? Did it go bad? They'll tune it from their staff in the back. So the Dave Chappelle stuff, I think is a little bit overblown. I think people are just looking for an excuse to attack him, in my personal opinion. I don't agree with everything, but he has been open about being open to fixing and his discussions and opening his mind about things and whatnot. He's anyone that's open and
Right.
admits that they're wrong about something or they're being ignorant, you shouldn't be canceling them for. You should open those discussions for. Just the people that are like refusing. They're like, no. I'm trying not to say anything bad. It's people that are like refusing to change their mind or like, no, it's just this way. You can't fix anything. These people are always like this, or it's always going to be this way. That's when you cancel people, because that's when cancel culture should be kind of lighting up, because it's like, hey, here's a problem, and here's an example of why this is a problem in society right now. Is you have people like this that think like this and refuse to like see it from a different angle, maybe be a bit more heartwarming or understanding, empathetic. Whereas someone like Dave Chappelle for years has always been like, if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. I may disagree with you, but I'll listen to you and I'll try to understand. And he changes his jokes for it. He does. Like Dave Chappelle show had tons of feedback where he was constantly changing things with his staff. So, as an example.
Yeah,
he's a very unique case, but he's also just very out there with, this is what's going on in my mind, and this is why I think this way, and here's my evidence to support it, and you don't have to like it, but you can see why I think this way, and here's my joke. And he gives all the context for why he thinks some way, even if it is a little bit too far or too rash, but he's always been honest and open. So for someone like Dave Chappelle specifically, you just got an open discussion with him. I think he's more than willing to learn about what he's doing, and he'll remove a joke if he thinks it does go too far. He's done that before plenty of times. He's more about doing things right and what he thinks is correct, especially with the black community, which with a lot of jokes and stuff he made for Dave Chappelle's show, he openly talks about just not doing things that the upper heads wanted him to do, and he's like, no, I'm not comfortable with that, or I'm not going to do that because that's not what we think is funny or what is correct. And so he's all for it. He's not like, yeah, you can't remove stereotypes or stigmas from every person in the world. So everyone's going to have their opinions on something, because not everyone can be fully educated. But it's the people that are refusing, or they don't show any indication that they want to learn or think otherwise or behave differently or open for communication. Those are the ones that the cancel culture should be applied to in moderation, not to the extreme extent of canceling them entirely. Only if they just refuse to do anything at all and they're just maintaining that way, then yeah, let their careers fall through. I'm always about giving people second chances, or giving not maybe benefit of the doubt might be a little bit too nice to say, but I can't think of another way to say it. Giving people benefit of the doubt, trying to understand why they're behaving or saying those things, and then try to work with them to change why they're thinking that way and make them think otherwise, make them give second thought or whatever to the targeted demographic that they're insulting or whatever.
Allow them to like add some context to their what they said or what they think.
Yes. Now, if someone just makes a random like hard R joke out of nowhere in the middle of the show with no context, yeah, like there's no reason for that. If there's a big build-up and they're giving an example of what people said and what they've seen and heard and all that stuff, then there's more context to it. You can understand why a joke may be delivered that way. But if out of the blue and maybe the topic is, like talking about pizza joints or something they don't like, and then they just throw out like a hard R N-word, and then don't even acknowledge it and go back to talking about pizza dough being tossed incorrectly, like you're gonna be like, what the hell was that? Like that's clearly a problem. But the way Dave Chappelle and other people like build their jokes and deliver them and give context, they kind of like, you kind of see the thought process and where you can start beginning to work with them or fix how they're approaching a topic if they want to continue making that joke, and how to maybe deliver it better and still get the same kind of effect. It depends on the individual and their comedic style, I think.
Yeah, but there's still like a science to it on some level. But
science to what? Yeah, the joke delivery?
I mean, all of it. Like a joke and everything, for it to land, it still has to like make sense. Like, even if it's like some off the wall, like crazy crap, it almost still has to make sense. Like if you laugh, it's like for a reason.
Yeah,
it's not random.
Again, most people, if you tell a joke of a dude walked into the door and he forgot to open the door when he walked into it, like people might chuckle because like, oh, that's that's a stupid thing to do. But you're not going to get a lot of people to laugh at that. It's more of a visual joke. people also are just gonna be like, that's a joke they've seen or heard 100 times of like, oh well, they forgot to open the doorknob, and that's a very bad example I'm giving, but that's what I mean. Like if someone goes on stage and is just giving simple jokes like that, no one's gonna laugh at their bits. They have to push stereotypes and social stigmas, politics going on right now, world news. They have to like constantly push people's boundaries to make them think slightly different or be like, oh, I wasn't expecting that kind of angle or perspective. So there is a science to it. You have to like really like mess with perspective. You have to approach the joke from a certain angle and be like, here's an angle you weren't expecting. And it's tough as a comedian, especially if before some jokes you have to be like, now I don't believe what I'm about to say, but here's what I'm going to say. That's going to take people out of the moment for the joke, and people are going to be thinking of it more analytically than like in the moment and reactionary, which is the point of a comedy show, is to be reactionary. You're just supposed to be in the moment and be like, surprise me or make me think differently, make me think of it in a funny angle, and maybe not take it a little as seriously as the news portrays or something like that. So there definitely is a science to it. I don't know the answer to like putting a buffer before the punchline and being like, all right, I don't agree with this, but here's hard R, like like you can't.
That's not cool.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's a show. It's to entertain. Maybe before the whole joke or the story begins, also they could, maybe a way to do it is like, all right, here, I gotta tell you the story. You're not gonna believe it. I don't support it, but I gotta tell you what happened. And maybe that's a way to do it, or something like that. But I'm not an expert. That's not my career.
I kind of wish that, the cancel culture should be used more like as a way to learn and,
That's what
an
it kind of
opportunity for
started out.
people to learn.
That's
But
what
rather
some people try
instead
to
it's
turn it
not
into.
used as that. It's just, weaponized nowadays, and people just get canceled for anything now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people tried to turn it into learning lessons. A lot of people, especially younger, I think, influencers that aren't so political or religious, or one like me and me versus them, egotistical. They're more than willing to open up to their community if their community's like, yo, you messed up. They're like, all right, tell me how I messed up. um, I'm not gonna name drop, but I could tell you guys outside the recording of examples. But I think that's more of a youth thing where they're willing to. Their audiences are more spread out demographically, where especially with online, growing up with the internet, we're used to more personalities and demographics engaging with us unknowingly, and that just exists in their communities or the communities that you're a part of, and so they're more willing to learn about it. It's definitely more. This is a biased, unresearched opinion. It's more of a older generation issue with cancel culture where they're still not understanding how the internet works and how society works, because they've all grown up in their own bubbles with basic news and newspapers, headlines and stuff. So they're not used to constant feedback all the time, and they're not used to having a whole world to talk to all the time. They spent like 20, 30, 40 years growing up talking with just the people in their town at most, maybe a phone call to mom if it was cheap, across the country. Like,
Right.
they're not used to having the world at their feet and being like, someone in Idaho doesn't agree with me because their whole life, their whole equal 43 years of life, they did something different. They don't think I'm right. Well, fuck them. Like, they didn't grow up in a world of different. Their exposure to the world and other opinions came solely from news or from other people that just coincidentally were in town with them that gave different life experiences. They didn't have that constant feedback. Like, you and I right now could go to talk to people in Germany right now while gaming or something and be like, yo, what do you guys think about this? Like, and it'd probably give you the same impression. I've seen it as internet, the youth growing up on the internet, we all kind of, the globalization aspect of culture and understanding is happening with our generation and below us, or younger than us, because we're all growing up with the same kind of exposure to everything. Even if we have our own little special pockets on the internet that we enjoy, our general understanding of how the internet works and who's on the internet and different people are out there is a lot more broad and understanding than our parents' generation, who still sometimes struggle with the cable bill and not understanding why so many channels exist.
Yeah, those are good points. I think a lot of the issues behind cancel culture. Well, I mean, a lot of it's just not like is like a lack of understanding. Because I mean, as you just pointed out, people in different areas or like of different age groups, like I mean, everyone has different things going on, and like using older generations as an example. I mean, yeah, the world was like a much smaller place before then, or before now. Like no internet, a very narrow like slice of the world is all they really had to experience. And once things kind of blew up and went to the internet, they all of a sudden they start hearing and seeing things that don't exactly like line up with what they're used to. But I mean, I guess if I go back to like the whole Chappelle thing,
Yeah.
like similar issue. I think it's a lack of understanding. So, I mean, I guess I am a little bit biased, at least a little bit. I like Dave Chappelle. I don't personally think that anything that he's ever said or done in a bit anyway was really done from like a place of hatred,
Malice.
so to
Yeah.
speak.
Right.
And so like I've talked to someone, who was all about canceling Dave Chappelle, but I get what was just interesting again was like the lack of understanding, because when we brought up like primary talking points about like what the issues were with his jokes and stuff, I mean, I asked, well, did you watch the stand up? And then they said, no, I don't need to. I know what he said.
Yeah, that's.
And
Oh,
like,
I don't
but
want
like
to
you
interrupt.
can't do that. It's like yeah, but I mean, like you just took a whole bunch of stuff out of context, and now you're saying that he's just a horrible man who makes millions of dollars, making a chunk of the population feel horrible and getting off on it.
Yeah,
It's
there was
that's not even close.
there was like a news article at the time of that latest controversy, or the big one, where they were taking a poll of people that had what their assessment was, and they asked, "Have you watched the special?" And like 2/3 of the people that were trying to cancel him or had an issue with it were like, "No, no, no, I just saw the highlight or something." Like they were just being reactionary to headlines, like what big social media and politicians want. They just want you to be sheep and just not pay attention to the actual details and context of stuff. They're like, take it out of context. Don't listen to what they said just before it, like literally 3 seconds before they said, I do not mean what I'm about to say. They just cut that part of the clip out for, not that that's what happened in this instance, but you get what I'm saying. I remember that because a lot of people that, not everyone, but there's a good chunk of individuals that of that percentage, when they watched the special, it went from like 65% down to like 41%. They were like, okay, well, that makes a little bit more sense. I don't think he should be canceled, but so it dropped down to like a 50-50 average at that point from people just listening to it. So I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just pointing it out that a lot of, like you said, a lot of people are just kind of reactionary and they just don't give the whole thing a. Maybe they probably don't want to watch it because they don't want to support him just from that little bit, which is fine. People can make their own decisions, but if you really want to like judge someone or cancel them for something, you need to make sure you understand the full context of what they're doing and why.
Yeah.
You can't just be reactionary to. Otherwise, like, politics has already messed itself. But if everyone just listened to like one thing that, let's say, Pelosi said every day, and it's like that's the only thing you hear for the day, then that's not very informed. You technically shouldn't be making decisions on things you don't understand or have insight into, any context for. That's just not how anything productive gets done.
Yeah, I agree. But let me pose like a question to you two. Do you think you've done anything noteworthy that would warrant you getting canceled? Is there anything you've said or done or posted on social media that you think someone could take out of context and decide to go after you?
Legally, I'm not allowed to answer that. My lawyers advise me otherwise.
I mean, I don't even have. I have next to no presence on social media.
Oh my god, yeah, that's what I love about. That's what I like about some of my friends. They're like me. We're non-existent on social media, but we have strong opinions about it.
Yeah. So,
But definitely do follow this podcast on social media, on our Instagram and
100%.
Facebook.
I want you to hit every like button, every subscribe button out there. Follow, share it with your friends, your family, your dog, Betty
it's good
from
for
down
your
the
health.
street. Yeah, this is a great topic to give to your wannabe crush. To say like, hey, want to hear something serious?
Dig on this.
Yeah, talking about Dave Chappelle. and the N word for Yale. So, yeah, no, I've said a bunch of stupid stuff. I'm an amateur comedian. You guys know that off script, off mic. I say a lot of pushing the boundary jokes, not in a bad way, but people I've learned, and I've avoided this myself, but people when they want to be funny or comedians, they often resort to shock factor because it's just like, you weren't expecting it, and it breaks what you would expect from me. I've kept myself from doing that, so I haven't said anything or put myself in a situation publicly or whatever, definitely not at work or anything, where the jokes I make would be too extreme for anything, or I wouldn't say anything extreme because I just don't think that way. I'm a very neutral person all around. If I make an extreme joke, it's very obviously for shock factor, and you can tell by the way I'm exaggerating things with hand movements or voice and everything that's clearly just a joke for shock factor, and like, look how weird and extreme I can get, and then I just like feel bad myself, but I act like I don't. But it's nothing super extreme either. I don't say anything super extreme.
Yeah.
I don't say anything mean. If I do say something mean, it's very obvious that it's meant to be taken as a joke, and I'll usually apologize immediately after. But it's still kind of funny, especially if it wasn't expected. But what I was getting at was people, new comedians and stuff, or people that want to start making more jokes, they go for the shock factor. They start cussing a lot more. They start going like a little bit more extreme and pushing the boundaries because they're like, I'm not getting that same initial response as the first time I said fuck. So now I gotta say more. I gotta say fucktard, and they keep going on and adding more explicitives or adjectives. And if people can easily get carried away with that, which is what causes a lot of like internet personalities with big egos to get carried away, because they're like, well, I hear it all the time on Xbox Live back when I was growing up or something like that, and it's like, no, that's just not how it works. They shouldn't have gotten away with it, but we're in a totally different world back then and totally different world nowadays where it's easier to catch those things.
Yeah, well, I hope you don't get canceled for saying fucktard.
Oh my god, that'd be very disappointing if that's what cancels me. If fucktard is what cancels me instead of like other descriptions I use for people.
Well, I was going to say that for someone who has like a lot of presence on social media, I don't even know anymore what would be like considered cancelable.
I can cancel you. You want me to make an account and cancel you? I can find something.
Right. I mean, like, yeah, you could find anything. You can take me out of context, you could like trim like some of my tweets and just like post something very like I don't know.
But
That's
that's
the thing.
very
It's like I
obvious.
don't know
That's very
what I
obvious
have
that
out
it's
there.
malicious at that point if they're tampering with evidence or tweets of like, oh, this is what he said, and it's like clearly he
Well, that's
put a
the
black
thing.
line
It's
through
like,
this.
the culture is malicious, It can be used maliciously, I mean, you gave the example like a while ago about like the celebrity that was looking up information on others. I mean, it's just crazy because like anything can be taken out of context nowadays.
It's not really a force of good anymore. But like, I guess what eats at me is that like the force behind it is mostly just like ignorance or like intolerance. Because like I feel like a lot of these issues could be avoided too if people just didn't go straight to like the tap of like the source of something they don't like. Like these stand-ups that, you know, they attract a lot of negative attention because like people will go and see comedians and they know what their style is and they don't like them, but they'll still go to their show. It's like nobody's forcing you to like absorb this content or anything. It's
Yeah,
like you could
exactly.
choose to avoid watching or listening to someone if you know that like their take doesn't line up with yours. Like that's just always bothered me a lot. It's like I don't know, they put themselves in those situations, but then when they want to go on a crusade to cancel somebody, then they don't do like the due diligence. They'll just take stuff out of context and get angry.
Well,
It's like, why not just
Get
avoid?
angry for getting angry's sake.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's like just avoid it.
it's the same way with how politics works and stuff. People don't actually like read the full transcripts or listen into these reportings and of what's said or done, and they're just like taking things that are given to them and be like, oh, I don't agree with that. And it's like if you listen to everything else, that's like I'm not giving it a clear example, but like let's say a chamber of
The
Congress is
only
interviewing
example that I can
someone.
think of, the only example I can think of is like death panels back when they were trying to pass like the healthcare law.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no death panels. They just literally created that out of nowhere. It was supposed to be like a end of health, like, hospice type of thing
Mm-hmm.
where, the patients can discuss with like doctors about, what to do for treatment and end of life. And then they turned that into death panels. But that's just an example that I was thinking
Interesting.
in politics. Yeah.
Yeah. Um. Yeah, that's a total topic. Okay, let
Yeah.
me try. Let me try and speak again differently. That's a totally different topic. Is discussing ignorance and intolerance and news and how people absorb stuff and they don't want to leave their comfort zones, etc. But that does seem to be the core of what cancel culture is. People are not wanting to understand, or obviously, if someone is the aggressor and people are trying to cancel that person for being the aggressor, it's easy to just be like, I'm not going to give them a second chance or think about why they said something or why they think some way. You know, you don't know people's upbringings and stuff. I'm not justifying it, but the least people could do before they just mass dogpile onto someone to try and cancel them is being like, why? Where are they coming from and why are they coming from that? What are the sources? Like Platypus said, like maybe there's some extra context to this that I'm just not understanding or it's being misquoted or something. And if it's very blatant and obvious, go ahead. Just you don't have to like him. You don't have to give him a second chance, especially if you don't agree with it. Me, I'm pretty much always under the mindset of giving the aggressor or something a second chance or a chance to seek understanding or to understand. And if they choose not to take up those offers and whatnot, then that's their choice, and therefore they can get the punishment of being canceled or losing a bunch of fans and whatnot. It's tough. But that kind of goes under the same kind of subject of like conspiracy theories where they just don't pay attention to other stuff. They only look at and listen to what they want, and they're just like, see, that just supports what I said. They're a bad person.
Well, people need echo chambers. I mean,
They don't.
I don't. A lot
Modern
of
day
people just.
society doesn't understand how internet works. Social media is just a giant echo chamber. We've all heard that before, like you
Well,
said.
a lot of people, for some reason, also can't handle like hearing other opinions that don't line up with their own. Like if someone disagrees with you, then it's like declaring war or something. Kind of wild.
My
It's like, I
dog
mean,
is
if people,
100% better than your dog. You're going down.
it
You're
just
dead to me. Barely human. You're dead to me.
there wouldn't really be that much cool shit if everyone thought and felt the exact same way. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Um. Changing topics slightly. Hold on, my mind just went blank. I'm just really craving pizza all of a sudden. I just totally just had pictures of pizza in my head when I was trying to think.
It's probably you're thinking about the Super Bowl and
No,
you're kind of craving pizza and wings now.
I don't watch the Super Bowl.
I'm gonna get pizza. Yeah, I'm not
Yeah, I'm
watching the
definitely
Super
getting
Bowl,
pizza.
but
I
Oh, I'm
I
not
make
want
watching
pizza.
either.
I make pizza. My pizza that I make I think is better than pizza I can get from any restaurant.
Is there
Well,
like a way to get legit deep dish around here? Because once Uno basically died, that doesn't really exist outside of Chicago.
Oh my God, I
you
don't
have to
know.
go find a local place where they're from Chicago or something that they can make it for you. It's
Good luck finding it.
yeah, there's definitely stuff out there, I think.
A
But you got
lot
to
of
go looking
places,
for it.
to them, deep dish just means pan, and
Slightly
that's
thicker
not the
pizza
same
crust.
thing.
Yeah, exactly. No, deep dish is a pie. There's a reason it's called a pizza pie. And our friend Noodles had his first experience of a deep dish when he had that layover in Chicago, and he's like, "Oh my God, it's the best pizza I've ever had." I was like, "Yeah, see,
It's pretty great.
yeah." But no, you need not a pan to make a deep dish. You got to actually uh, get the proper cookware. You can't just be like, "Oh, see, it's just a thicker crust." Um,
Not quite.
God, I used to be such a fan of like Papa John's pizza and whatnot. Yeah, big fanboy for it. But he had his own cancel culture thing, but that's a totally different story based on with evidence of him having interviews of how he was set up and whatnot. But that's a totally different topic. I still think Pizza Hut and Papa John's are leagues beyond Domino's, but I'll save that for a different discussion. I know we have some people in our group that are probably a bit more passionate about which pizza joints are better, but I'll just say I'm on the side of Domino's is the worst, hands down.
Yeah, we're definitely saving that for a later episode. But what were you about to say, Dean? What did you want to talk about?
Before the pizza talk,
Yeah.
I don't know. Part of me wanted to go back into comedians because I love improv and I love comedians and I follow that a lot. That's where a lot of my personality came from. Definitely growing up was just like, oh, that's funny. That's funny. Oh, I like the jokes. I get the jokes. I like the quick wit. I like the humor of it. But talking about comedians, then talking about cancel culture, it's like I don't want to just start name dropping favorite comedians and stuff because then it's gonna be like awkward. Like
Bill Burr.
Yeah, I love Bill Burr. Oh my god, his specials are some of the best. Chris Porter, a national treasure. He probably is not a good topic for cancel culture either at times with some of his jokes who they're targeted at. They're not like malicious, but he's just like very blunt and like, I don't like people like this that are just stupid. We don't need a bunch of stupid people canceling others because then it's not a focused effort. Then it's just like emotionally reactive.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
That's why he said to start taking labels off
shit. Do not deliver childbirth with these skis. Gasoline is flammable. Light it, Johnny. I don't give a shit. Put it in the bag.
I'm tired of trying to read.
Yeah. So I wanted to kind of deviate a little bit away from comedians, even though I'm all for comedians.
I support the comedians.
Comedians.
I like to laugh.
I like having fun.
Yeah. #laugh.
You know who doesn't like having fun?
Who?
I was gonna name a random demographic, but I realized that's just gonna be bad.
Oh damn!
The Armenians. The Armenians hate it. Yeah, no, that's a Game Grumps reference, and they're just making a random joke. Also, if anyone gets that one, what I just did. That's an old one, also. Yeah, so I was like, let me just not talk about comedians since we're talking about cancel culture. We just talked about Dave Chappelle quite a bit. But sports, politics needs to stay out of sports. They should not be interviewing people that are just trying to catch a ball for a living to be like, what do you think about this person getting canceled? Or what do you think about what this politician said? Like, sports athletes are not...
Yeah, they're not.
I'm not
experts.
saying they're stupid. It's not their expertise to be thinking about this stuff. They're just, you could ask any fucking random person on the street, maybe with the same amount of money or less, and be like, what do you think about this? Like, it is not the place for politics. They're just looking for headlines to be attacking these politicians and get politicians to respond and that kind of stuff, because that's what gets the news. It's not what really the sports athletes thinks, because anyone in society is like, yeah, that's not their job to think about this or know what that. Like, yeah, they may think differently about it. You may not agree with what an athlete believes in or whatever, but that's not what they're there for. They're not there for defending your rights in court or anything like that. They're just there to catch a ball, throw a ball, run around really fast.
Yeah, sports.
Swim really fast. Yeah, I don't know why we brought politics into sports. There's no reason for it. If they're running for office, that's one thing. If they're just like their 10th year, their last year before they retired, and you're asking them why something in the news, what they think about it, they probably didn't even hear the headline until you just said it. They've been in the locker room all day just warming up in their head with their whatever routine is, whatever music they're listening to, etc. Like, that's something I don't agree with. I don't really watch too many sports, but all the headlines about sports that I see are always about what was said after the game, about some real life event. And if they want that, just ask random people on the street, but no one's going to be listening to Joe Smith on the street on 3rd Avenue being like, oh, well, I think this. Like, they're just looking for attention, the media. So I don't quite. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how to. I just really want to talk about comedians because we saw some improv recently, and I really enjoy that. But it's a sensitive topic.
And we can definitely talk about that, I guess.
Yeah, I've always wanted to do improv or have a stand-up bit sketch and a bunch of things. That's a personal interest of mine. I just find it fun is seeing how quick you can react to things. Like you were saying, oh, Dean or Platypus, would you ever be canceled for something you did on social media? No, but I've made some really stereotypical jokes in bits and improv and whatnot before, where it's like, oh, that pushes the boundary, but you can tell it's just very in the moment reactionary. You're trying not to lull. You're just like, what kind of falls under line with this? That's not too offensive, but definitely stereotypical. It's tough. It's not easy, especially for improv and stuff. So improvers nowadays, you have to, except for massive headliners or whatever, you have to, but they're very professional and good at it of just keeping things very family friendly, because you're like, one, you can expand off to so many things if you keep it family friendly, where if you start getting very focused or stereotypical and referencing things, it gets tougher to move away from that topic in the session. You start putting yourself into a corner of like, oh, well, this fairy tale individual is going on this quest for this very specific thing. It's like at some point they're just like doing a hard reset, like here's the new story. So it's a tough balancing act.
Right. I mean, the thing with like people who are in that business, the comedians, the improv professionals, they deserve the respect, because just to be able to perform like just live in front of like a ton of people is very taxing. Very, you have to be like very on your feet, in terms of thinking about what's the next thing to talk about, or it's just and I've actually got to witness it. And in reference to the improv show that you were referring to, that one was very like well done, very
Yeah.
professional.
Well, they've
And
also been doing
it's
it for
just
decades, so
right, and
it shows.
it's like their experience shows. They were able to work with anything that the audience threw at them. It was just amazing to see.
Yeah, exactly. And so asking comedians, I think people get this wrong, where like they think comedians and whatever shouldn't have input into like say politics or something, but honestly comedians are some of the most well-informed individuals because of how many people they engage with and talk about, and how they constantly are reacting, like whether improv or professional comedians, they're constantly like trying to be aware of what's going on in the real world, how people react to information, whether for the joke delivery or just in general to avoid a topic, or just what's going on as news for new material. Comedians are some of the most experienced individuals, and usually they can articulate very well their thoughts and opinions. So there's usually you see people like, oh, comedians should keep their mouths shut and whatever, but at the same time, they probably know more about a topic than say some politicians, and the politicians just have an ego boost that's being hurt because they're like, well, I'm wrong. Whatever side, Democrats or Republicans or neutral, independent, I don't give a shit. But like
Democrats.
yeah, I don't give a shit. Just comedians, I've always thought, are usually some of the most well-informed people throughout history. Even in like Greeks, when they were introducing comedy and drama, those were some of the most respected individuals in their community because they knew so much and they could actively make jokes and references to things that people wouldn't think about. But then they're like, oh, that's a funny twist. I never would have thought of that. Connected the dots. So
Yeah,
it's a tough profession.
definitely.
You gotta like just be informed, and you gotta just be aware and be a people person. Like really, and you don't have to be a people person, but you gotta know how people work to like really deliver it and do well. So like people like Dave Chappelle and Bill Burr, even if you find them offensive, you can't blame them for like being really on nose with some things that maybe you couldn't put into words yourself. Or with improv, exception, like we were talking about the people that have been doing it for decades for the show we saw, they had their own like rubric or things of like, I don't know where to go from here, so I'll default to some material that usually has worked for the last however many years and then we can expand off of it based on what the audience says or how they react just as easily. You could tell when they were like going into default mode for some reactions or statements, and then other times when they were just clearly just improvising on the spot, like, oh, this is a good pun and stuff like that. Like, those were the moments that are just really eye-catching. It's like, all right, there it is. There's the sparks of like the wit, the intelligence, the experience that they have. That's what I enjoy. I enjoy seeing that the clear distinction between like scripted in their head and like just reactionary 100%. Just that raw half second of hesitation before they say something as they're trying to think.
Oh yeah, I mean that's part of the draw of a good comedian. Like, I mean, a good comedian, it should be fun just to listen to them like tell a story, you know?
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
any comedian that's like worth a damn, at least the way I see it, usually you can kind of tell that they're pretty smart people in some sense anyway. I mean, again, if they're gonna comment on like world issues or talk about the things that they do and make it funny, in some sense, I mean, they still have to like understand the subject matter and like contort it into, you know, some kind of way that's funny, like whether it's like a twist ending or you just provide like some different type of like a different point of view pretty much
Yeah,
that's like
yeah,
eye opening.
even if they don't want to talk about it, they have enough knowledge to at least get themselves out of discussing it because they're like, well, what I do know with these headlines, I don't want to talk about it because of this and this. And then they kind of make it a little bit joke because they're a comedian. They got to say something like that to make it slightly funny, and then they can get out of it. You got to just be aware, and their job is to speak for a living. You know, everyone slips up. I stuttered in the middle of this a couple of times. Like, people are gonna make jokes or say
Didn't
something
notice.
that's, yeah. People are gonna make jokes or say stuff that just slips sometimes, and it's not even intentional. It's just like they're just using filler. Even if you're the most experienced individual with talking, you got people like Carlin that are just super scripted from start to finish with their acts, and you got other comedians that are just kind of ebbing and flowing with the nature of the crowd, and it just depends. But I don't like the disrespect some comedians get just because sometimes they go back and forth with politicians or with other celebrities, and they're like, well, you're just a comedian. All you do is make people laugh. And I was like, yeah, do you know how difficult that is? Not saying everyone can do it, not saying everyone can't do it, but at the same time, you know, some of the most respected comedians, they know what they're talking about. And
Right.
just because you don't like it or agree with it doesn't mean they don't know what they're talking about. It's probably more so that you're more ignorant and you don't understand why they made the joke they did or where it's coming from, or you don't agree with it, especially if it's targeted at them. But that's understandable. That's a fight or flight thing if you're being attacked. But
Quite honestly, though, like a lot of comedians are very well educated. You know, they do go to college, and like in comparison to some of our politicians who maybe don't even finish like a high school diploma. I mean, the whole thing about the argument that comedians shouldn't have like a say in like the political discourse is, you know,
because they're
completely
supposed to be
like
clowns and make
unfounded,
people
because like,
funny.
you know, there are people that are in our political discourse who, you know, are completely ignorant, you know, who, I don't know. I mean, it's just it's a false equivalency, and I think if anything, anyone who participates in like politics or in some way, which is basically everyone, should have like a say. You know,
Yeah.
whether or not to give weight to it is another issue, but as far as like giving weight to what comedians say, I think there's a good argument that they experience a lot more things, you know.
They see
They
more
definitely they
people.
definitely are more open to different, you know, people and
Yeah.
different experiences.
They interact with a lot more normal, everyday people that share that receive the same kind of shared information, headlines, and everything than the politicians who are constantly being lobbying, working with each other, working with elites and whatnot, because they're just trying to get stuff done. And here's a representative for the company and that kind of stuff. The comedians are much more in tune with the general populace, even if they themselves are extremely biased and you know who they are and you know all that fun stuff. I don't care. You should still at least listen to why they're saying that, because then that tells you what that demographic is thinking and why they're thinking that way, and maybe there's something that could be changed with that. Nothing should ever be extreme, but comedians are just some of the most, at least socially intelligent people out there.
That's
The
true.
good
Yeah.
comedians, and that's not a subject anyone has ever talked about, but that's something that's always bothered me a bit. Is just people are like, oh, they're just a comedian, they're just a clown. Look at Dave Chappelle or something. They should just make people laugh and stop trying to give their own personal opinions to something. It's like, what do you think being a comedian is? Like, the class clown in school was totally different than a professional comedian that gets paid to make people laugh by making references to something. Or they could be totally free of political and modern day references. You got comedians like Gabriel Iglesias, for example, who does his own bits. He stays completely away from, politics and stuff like that, and he's got great shows. But he still is a people person. You can tell by the jokes he delivers. He's engaging with normal individuals, everyday individuals, and how they react to stuff, or his experiences interacting with police or whatever. And you can just see the intelligence of their jokes and their world building and their exposure to just everyday life. And it's they're not stupid people. They're good at talking and making it in a way that makes you laugh. And because they make you laugh, you think they're stupid, because most common form of humor out there is like shock humor. Or there's a theory out there where if people laugh at things because they feel superior to it. So usually when people laugh at something, is because they think someone is stupid or dumber. So, like, if someone trips over their own shoes, it's like, well, I'm not tripping over my shoes, and, you made a mistake of tripping over your shoes. You're not clearly as good as me. Or they say something wrong, it's because it's like, oh, you don't understand. That's funny. So I forget exactly what the theory is without looking it up, but there's a theory out there like that. So people start associating that with just having the job of being a professional comedian as just being the stupid one. Just like how media portrays any blue-collar job as being the stupid one, of being like the plumbers are the stupid ones in the group. You know what I mean? They're the joke of the show kind of stuff, when that's rarely ever the case. That's a totally different topic of media stereotypes, but that's what I'm wrapping up about comedians. Is just because they make people laugh does not mean they're stupid. Even if your class clown in school was like the stupid one making off comments or making false equivalencies, and you're like, that doesn't make any sense. That comes from one of those theories of what makes things funny, of just a superiority complex. And because someone's job is make me laugh, they must be stupid, like a jokester back in the medieval ages. I don't know.
That's just simple. That's a simple-minded approach, and it just takes a bit of like critical thinking.
Yeah, you
and
put a
everything.
little effort into what goes into it, and all of a sudden your perspective of what it takes to be a comedian changes. And I made that connection much younger, back in middle school and high school, but that's just because I was very, very interested in not becoming a comedian, but I just loved how it worked, what they had to do. And I've always been a critical thinker in terms of like, why does this stuff work, or how are they making it work compared to other people, and why do they have what they have and other people don't, or that kind of stuff. So that's a me thing, and just something I notice because I'm a fanboy of that genre in general, is like the disrespect it gets that often just goes overlooked. And why is that? I never thought I'd actually bring that up. I'm just surprised I kind of just casually segued that into this. Yeah, so any concluding thoughts, I guess, on this pretty, not pretty,
Well,
on
I
this
mean,
more
I was
serious
gonna say,
conversation?
well, I mean, I was just gonna go say about the whole thing about having like the perception that comedians are stupid. I think I've never had that connection. I don't think I've ever had that thought, because I've always thought, to myself, to be able to find some humor in anything is just, it takes a high level of like certain type of intelligence to be able to recognize, hey, yeah, this is funny, like and just showing that in itself is just, I think it's just amazing, to be able to create that sense of humor out of nothing, or out of like something that happened or what someone said. It takes a certain level of intelligence to be able to recognize that. And I think people don't give comedians their due credit, because it takes a certain level of recognition, a certain level of intelligence to be able to, I don't know, write a script, or have like jokes that work.
Yeah, we can talk about the whole industry of comedy and everything later, because there's so much more to break down into that. But that was just a weird thing, kind of in relation to like the Dave Chappelle stuff and politics and cancel culture, where I was like, that is a thing that just, like what Platypus said, people just don't apply critical thinking, and they're just like, well, you're just supposed to make jokes. I don't know why you think you're so smart, or you're not smarter than me. And I was like, the subtext exists out there. Whether you've experienced it
Right.
yourself, there's a lot of people out there like, well, I'm clearly smarter than this comedian. They're just making me laugh. Like, that's the best they can do in life. And their job is to
Right.
speak for hours or whatever and make you laugh and think differently. But people just don't apply a little bit of critical thinking to be like, wait a minute, why are they making me laugh, and why aren't I making them laugh? Or why aren't I making the other people
I
around me
think
laugh?
that's just surprising, that people don't recognize that, and they take that for granted.
And that kind of goes in, it kind of is a little similar to the whole cancel culture thing that Platypus was saying, where people just don't apply critical thinking, or they don't put any extra effort into thinking, why did they say something like that? They don't check the source of what they were saying for the extra context. Did you watch the special? It kind of triggered that thought in my head that I've had for years, right? It's like, comedians just are under-respected, whether people are aware of it or not. They're people. Anytime they show up, people are like, "Oh, they'll make me laugh. They'll make me smile," but they don't give a thought as to why they're doing it or how it's working. They know that it's a tough field, but then when they start thinking about it, they're like, "Well, they don't really know anything. They're just supposed to make me laugh," and it's just always irritated me because you see those comments all the time, but people just don't give second thoughts or glances about those comments being said or tweets about comedians and whatnot. And I'm like, again, there's so much more to get into about comedy in general and improv and sponsorships and all that stuff. That'll be a later episode, but the general gist of it was just like, it kind of related, but I didn't want to touch on it entirely and keep it correlated to cancel culture, because I'm not trying to cancel comedians and I'm not trying to justify comedians, but I am trying to be like, there's a world out there that people don't understand of a stigma around comedians, and it just goes under realized. I'm not good with words. But yeah, this was definitely a more, I guess, serious, slightly ignorant episode about cancel culture and whatnot. Without doing too much research, it was more just a general understanding of what people think. I know I spoke a lot. Did you guys have any final conclusions for this? Sorry for taking up a lot of time. I don't know if you guys agreed with everything I said or disagreed. I know I just kind of kept going and darting.
Yeah, I think the issue is when you agree with someone like wholly about like certain topics, it makes it really difficult to bring in like a different viewpoint, and so
Yeah.
it's just like it's like, all right, well, I concur with that.
And there's not too
There's
much
not
to
much
say.
I can
Yeah.
there's not much I can add to it, so it's just like, I mean, like,
It's tough to be devil's
So-
advocate. It really is, because you got to put yourself sympathetically or something at a different perspective, a different angle.
which I was kind of trying to do, at least, with the whole cancel culture thing. I mean, I didn't really buy into like the whole thing that is like all bad. But
No,
the thing
it's
is, like,
not.
I do feel like it is a little, I think it is a little bad. People take advantage of it, and
People take advantage of everything. I think.
but that's the thing. It's like people take advantage of anything.
Yeah, so the headlines we kind of see nowadays are just like the extremists are like, we can keep using this. I think. I could be wrong. Again, I'm clearly not on social media, so I don't see every single trending tag of when someone's getting canceled and for what. But the big headlines that I do see is usually for more extreme or mundane things, where it's like, we're running out of options. Who's next? Like,
I think in terms of like social media tags that just like get popular, I don't even notice like the people getting canceled. I think I'll give you an example. Like last week it was like on Twitter it was like the topic like send nudes was like trending, and the thing is, like, it was so funny to me because like Twitter is very like in control of like what's visible in terms of like what is trending, and so just for that to slip through, it was very amusing. I didn't go into that like hashtag to see like what posts in terms of like what people are posting about, but I mean, I I think it was just amusing in general.
yeah. Not Ari, Platypus. What are your, I think, concluding thoughts for this? Because again, you were kind of leading this discussion before we started recording, and then I kind of just
what do you think?
injected anything and everything I was thinking of. I was like, I don't have that much to say, and then I just didn't shut up. So
Oh, let me see.
let me check my list.
Well, I'm down to play devil's advocate sometime again. I'd also just say,
You
yeah,
should be a lawyer.
like well, let's see about that. We'll see about that. But yeah, just like everything has a backstory. Usually, if somebody says or does something, there's a reason. I think that's part of why a lot of at least like the toxic cancel culture we were commenting on bothers me, because it was just like a total lack of like due diligence and just like I guess just the necessity for like an echo chamber. Like, okay, well, this person just said something that totally counters my view on this, so I'm gonna like attack it and try to cancel it. And that's just the kind of shit that pisses me off. But then also, I guess to a sort of separate point, when like they're saying that comedians shouldn't really be giving their opinion on stuff. I mean,
But sports athletes can.
well, okay, I guess it's just like it would have to be like a case by case basis. But I mean, so sure, maybe they're not politicians, but it could just be that like they're totally, I guess, abstract experiences from people in that realm could still offer like a pretty groundbreaking perspective, because it's taking like experiences and thinking that they aren't necessarily accustomed to hearing and seeing all the time. And that doesn't guarantee anything. It's just like they're counting it out just because it's not within that like sphere of political science or whatever. But it could still be like some pretty good shit. But yeah, that's pretty much about all I was gonna say. Probably gonna go like shower and watch the new Attack on Titan and the new Demon Slayer and the new Euphoria, and I feel like I'm forgetting something, but there's a lot of shows to keep up with right now.
Yeah, it's a good season.
Is Euphoria like released every week?
Yeah, they're doing one a week.
Okay.
Okay.
There's like 5 or 6 episodes in season 2, like 1-hour episodes. So.
Oh yeah, they're making headlines all the time too.
Oh my god.
For the same reason sometimes, that we talked about.
Yeah, that show's crazy.
Yeah, I don't watch it. I know what it's about, but I'm a little bit too busy to keep up with all the shows that are making headlines these days. So, pick and choose.
I'm probably gonna go and buy some pizza now.
I really want pizza.
Yeah, you're welcome. I just make my own. Just learn to make your own, gentlemen. Just. Yeah.
I've made my own before, and it was awful.
I've never made a bad pizza. I've never made a bad pizza. I'll be honest. Even
I've only made a bad pizza. I made it like 3 times, and it's all been bad.
It took me like 2 hours to make my first one, but that's because I fucking loaded it with toppings and I messed up the dough and stuff. But it still was good at the end. Like it didn't look the prettiest, but it still tasted good.
Mine was a simple pepperoni pizza, and it was never good.
Oh my god, no!
Jesus,
how do you ruin a pepperoni pizza? I have no idea, but I don't know. It was just awful.
The pepperoni all fell off somehow.
No, not that bad.
So, all right, gentlemen. Yeah, a little bit more of a, I guess, serious topic than usual, but definitely one on our list to take off. It's something we definitely wanted to discuss.
Definitely was afraid to make jokes.
Oh yeah, and give specific
I had a couple.
Examples.
I'm just like, I can't say this.
I didn't want to give examples. I'm not trying to push any boundaries yet. I'm trying to take this a little bit more serious of a topic because there are definitely some jokes that I wanted to say or repeat from examples. I'm like, no, not exactly. I'm not afraid to get canceled, but it's just a little bit out of taste.
Just get canceled on the cancel culture episode. Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, I don't make any extreme jokes that would get me canceled. I just don't want to, and I'm not gonna repeat any jokes, and I don't want to repeat any jokes just because I don't want to make direct references to people or something. I'm just trying to keep it general. So that's it. Don't cancel me. Anyways,
please don't cancel us. We're great people. We promise.
Yeah, trust us in our bias. So, anyways, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to tune in next time for the next episode. Once again, I am Dean, joined by my co-host Ari and Platypus, and we will catch you all next time. So
See you guys.
All right, peace.